by Stephen O'Byrne, a public affairs consultant with MKC Communications and formerly a senior figure with the PDs. I'm also joined by John Stewart of the Irish National Organisation of the Unemployed. John, to you first, just on the whole internships. We've seen that there can be problems there, and this scheme is only just up and running. Are you concerned, though, that real jobs and real places for people prepared to do jobs are going to be displaced and replaced by cheap labour, effectively?
Internships, Richard, and other programmes, they're not the panacea for, or the response, indeed, that's required to mass unemployment. At an individual level, I think that they do have a usefulness, there's no doubt about that, but we would be concerned, of course, in relation to how internships are policed. It's absolutely critical that people should not be exploited, and that the opportunities that they have by participating in an internship should provide positive benefits and positive outcomes for the interns.
Now, we saw there in Adele's report that you can get around the description by calling it one thing, but it very quickly becomes something else.
Oh, absolutely. If there's a job that needs to be done, well, then the organisation needs to recruit somebody to do that job and pay them the rate for the job.
How do you police it, though?
It's absolutely critical that this system is policed and is policed appropriately. And within the guidelines laid down within JobBridge in terms of host organisations that register their details with the website in terms of internship opportunities, it's very clear there in terms of what the requirements are. And it's very clear as well that there will be spot checks in relation to this. But I suppose my concern would be that given the potential number of organisations involved, you could be looking at well over 1,000, maybe 2,000 host organisations without significant increase in resources in order to police that. It's very difficult to see how the department is going to get around all of them.
You also need a kind of a whistleblower, don't you? Because you're relying on the cooperation of the worker or the intern who may understandably be afraid to speak up. You
do, and there is provision within the guidelines as well for whistleblowing, and I think it's very, very important that if anybody is on an intern position, or indeed a work placement position or any other work programme who feel that they're being exploited, it's absolutely paramount that they do report those concerns.
I want to move on to the wider issue of the social welfare, and Stephen O'Byrne, you were writing about this in the newspapers during the week. You raised the question, are the Irish work shy, or are some Irish work shy? Answer it. Are they?
Well, I think, Richard, I was trying to raise a number of questions, not just that. I think myself that there's a very one-dimensional approach to the debate about what is the most intractable problem in our society. Even when you take the headline figure of 470,000 on the live register last month, that again gives an impression to anybody who is coming onto the jobs market, my God, it's hardly worth my while trying. Now, the real figure is actually about 290,000, which is a significantly lower figure. In other words, the live register is a somewhat misleading barometer of the real state of unemployment. And indeed, the CSO themselves say in their opening page of the report on the live register, they say themselves, the live register is not designed to measure unemployment. So what I think it's time that this country seriously debated the elements and the strands of our unemployment crisis, because it's not a one-dimensional monolith. And that's what I've been asking about. I've been asking questions about whether there are jobs out there which Irish people are reluctant to take up.
Usually, Stephen, if somebody asks the question, are there a lot of people out there who are work shy, it means they think there are.
I think there are some people who are work shy. I mean, I would echo the phrase used by the Minister, John Burton, who used the phrase a lifestyle choice. Now, I think some people are maybe work shy for very good practical reasons, because there is a poverty trap for a lot of people, particularly for families, where if you put in things like, a medical card, rent supplement, fuel allowance and so forth, people will make rational choices to say, I am much better off on the dole than taking up a lower paid job. And therefore I think that it's incumbent on government, particularly a government that has to borrow 50 million every day, 50 million, just to keep the show on the road, that we revisit the whole structure of the dole system and we really challenge people to go after the jobs that are out there. And
right. But where's the evidence, if any, that some people are deciding that they simply won't take a job because they couldn't be bothered?
Well, I think, Richard, I cite one example. In the first 6 months of this year, just under 3,000 Brazilians were given PPS numbers coming into this country. Now, I think, well, it's pretty evident to those who know the industry that a lot of those people are coming to work here in the meat processing sector. There is also the market gardening or horticulture sector, where, again, these are people to a very large extent by foreign nationals. And again, I made the observation after 3 years of recession, I am particularly struck by the incidence of foreign nationals right across the hospitality sector, and not just in Dublin or other cities.
Again, you seem to be saying that they wouldn't be coming in if Irish people were prepared to do the jobs. Ipso facto, Irish are not prepared to do the jobs.
I think I think there are, and John, I think, would have a better handle on this. I think there are tens of thousands of people who are absolutely committed to trying to find employment.
Yeah, we know that.
However, I am saying that I think there are thousands of other Irish people for whom, it would interfere if they took on a job that might employ evening time or weekend working. They say, no thanks, I'm quite happy to do a bit of nixing and to take the dole.
John Stewart.
Well, there's a few things there. I don't agree with Stephen's analysis. Our experience and the experience of unemployed people have been, and not just over the last 10 years, but beyond that indeed as well, that when jobs are available, people will take up those jobs and take up those jobs in huge numbers.
How do you explain Stephen's figure there, the influx of foreign workers to work in those two trades that he cited?
Well, there are all sorts of issues in relation to how people end up in particular occupations, and I think we have to be careful here, because we can't just assume, for example, that people are in those occupations because those particular work and job opportunities were advertised very recently and Irish unemployed people didn't apply. In very many cases, people involved and employed in those types of sectors have been there for many, many years.
The ones he's talking about are not, they've just come in, is what he's saying.
3,000 new Brazilians coming in the first 6 months.
How would you explain that? Because obviously they're skilled jobs, but they're not skills that we don't have in this country.
They're skilled jobs, they're skills that we do have in this country, and the key thing is that people who have those skills should have the opportunity to apply for those jobs and to take up those jobs. And it's absolutely critical that unemployed people, through the establishment of a new employment and entitlement service, have those supports in order to do that. The evidence is very, very strong. Unemployed people want to work. They're desperate to work, and really the issue is that we've lost 300,000 jobs in the last 4 years.
Wouldn't you be naive to believe that everybody wants to work, John?
Well, again, our evidence, and I only really say from what we see as an unemployed organisation, people are absolutely desperate to work. They're desperate to get back to work. They're desperate to move off welfare back into employment and to start and earn an income again. Social welfare payments only replace a proportion of the wages that people would have earned previously. People are hanging on literally by their fingertips. They need to get back to work, Richard. They want to get back to work, and that's what people are desperately trying to do.
But could I point out, Richard, another anomaly in the system? I mean, we have, John can correct me here, I think we have over 70,000 people on short-time working, typically 3-day working. They then claim on, the dole for the remainder of the week, but they're not getting dole for just 2 days of the week. They're getting dole for 3 days of the week. The social welfare week is a 6-day week, not a 5-day week. So, there are anomalies there that I think, for a country, again, as I say, which is letting, special needs assistance go in our education system, I think we have to reappraise the whole unemployment way in which we address it. We've got to disaggregate it. We've got to look at other jobs out there. Are there incentives for people to go for those jobs? Again, I pose the question, as I say, about sectors where the predominant workforce is foreign nationals. I wonder why.
Isn't it entirely plausible, though, that somebody who's just out of work may not find the training course or indeed the job, even a part-time job, that they would want in a short space of time, and they may opt to stay on the dole for very valid reasons? For
valid reasons in the short term, yes. But again, the Live Register figures, I think, will highlight the numbers of people who will say are on the Live Register or on the, for over 12 months. And that's a growing figure, and it's a figure of great concern.
John Stewart, it seems from the signals we're getting, not just from Joan Burton, but from others within this government, that cuts in social welfare are coming down the line, and it will be to do with whether or not you sign up for a training course or take the first available job. It's going to happen.
Well, there's a couple of myths, I think, that need to be clarified here, Richard. When you're unemployed and you seek to claim an unemployment payment, you've got to meet certain criteria. And the key criteria is that you've got to be available for and genuinely seeking work, and you've got to be able to show evidence of your job seeking. So it's not the case
the system as is foolproof?
It's not the case that people can sit back and wait for the ideal job to come through and not show evidence that they are actively pursuing job and employment opportunities and training opportunities as well. And there is provision there for payments to be cut, and we know that that's happening. But the problem is, Richard, and I think you've touched on it in terms of the type of information that people need when they lose their job. It's absolutely critical that when somebody loses their job, they're able to access information quickly. That's absolutely key. Information about the range of training opportunities that are there, employment programs, but critically at the end of the day, it is about work. It's about jobs, and that's really where the debate needs to focus.
That's right.